By looking at this question related to the WSPS model, we were given that the labor market is described by the following wage setting, price setting equation, and we're given this prediction function. And then the first part asks us to rewrite wage setting and price setting in terms of rate wage. We did this over here. And then in the second part, we wanted to plot the wage setting and price setting relation in terms of the real wage and the unemployment rate with the latter on the horizontal axis. Right, so we plotted a WSPS curve in the UW by P plane. Now we want to plot them in the U and plane, right? So plot the wage setting and price setting relation in terms of the real wage and the level of employment to the lateral and horizontal axis. So let's see how we can do that now. Okay, so basically what we want to do is we want to do part C where we want to plotting wage setting relations in N W by P. Right, so now instead of U, we want N over here. Now, but for this, what we need to do is let's go back to a weight setting and price setting relations, which we wrote in terms of the rate. So this was our weight setting equation in terms of the rate, which we had a U here, right? So if I just highlight this was a U. Right, and this was our price setting equation in terms of the rate, which this does not depend upon U, but in our weight setting equation, we did have a U. But now instead of U on the horizontal axis, we want to plot N on the horizontal axis. Right, so for this, we need to do is for this, sorry, for this, we need to write any U in WS and PS relations in terms of N. Right, so we need to write any U. So like the U we saw in our WS relation, because initially we were plotting it like this, right? We had W by P on vertical axis and U on horizontal axis. Now instead of U, we want N. So we want to write any U in this in terms of N, so we can plot it against N. But for this, we need a relationship between U and N. So we know any U that we have in a WSPS relations, we need to write it in terms of N to plot it against N. We need a relationship between U and N for that. So if I want to plot this weight setting relation where against N rather than U, I need a relationship between U and N, so I can write it in terms of N. Right, so let's figure out that relationship now. Now recall what the labor force is. Since labor force is N plus U, N is the level of employment, N is the level of employment, U is the level of unemployment. From here, we know N is equal to L minus U, but an issue over here happens that this gives. Now here we do have a relationship between N, but we have a relationship with capital U, not small u, right? There's a difference. Capital U is the level of unemployment, small u is unemployment rate. And we want a relationship between small u and like over here we have N. Because remember, if we go back to our WS relationship, there we had a small u over here, right? This is the unemployment rate. So we want a relationship between N and small u, right? And what we have over here is that N is L minus capital U. This gives a relation between N and capital U, which is the level of unemployment. We want a relation between N and small u, where small u is the level of unemployment rate, right? So the difference, right? So you wanted a relationship between u and n, right? You wanted a relationship between with small u and n, but you have a relationship between n and capital. We did find a relationship between n and capital U, but that's not what we're looking for. Looking for a relationship between n and small u, because it's the small u that appears in our WS relation. Right. Right. So since we know u is equal to u by L, right? And remember, what is u over here? It's the unemployment rate. And this is the level of unemployment. Right? So what we can do is, from here, we can establish that capital U is equal to small ul. Right? So now I can write n in terms of small u, L minus small ul. And if I just factor out n, this becomes 1 minus ul. So n is equal to 1 minus ul, and this makes it sense, right? Because if u is the unemployment rate, 1 minus u is the employment rate. So if you multiply with the labor force, you get n. Right? So in this way, they've developed a relationship between n and u, right? Because we said if we want to plot our WS and PS relations in the against capital level of employment instead of small which is unemployment rate. For this, we need to write any U in WS and PS relation in terms of N. And for this, like we said, we need a relationship between U and N, and we found this relationship. So now, rewriting WS and PS relation in terms of N instead of U, using n is equal to 1 minus ul. And remember what a WS relation was? Let's just recall. We already found this as W by P is equal to 1 minus UC. And what our PS relation was? W by P is equal to 1 by 1 plus n. So let's just go back. This was a WS relation, right? W by P is Z1 minus U, which we wrote in terms of railways, and this was W by P is 1 by 1 plus n. We did this in the first one. Right, so now rewriting WS and PS relation in terms of N instead of U using this, right? So let me write the WS in terms of the rail wage. So then this would be W by P. Now we know in over here we have, let's just look at this, right? So we have a 1 minus u here. What we will do is we'll replace it with 1 minus u, right? Because see, the idea was this, we wanted to write W as PS relation in terms of n instead of u using this, right? So from this relationship between n and u, we know 1 minus u is n by l. So from here, I know 1 minus u is n by l. So now I can plug this over here and get my WS relation in terms of n, right? So this is going to be W by P is equal to n by n, right? And now what do we see over here? We see that there is a positive relationship between the level of employment and the real wage chosen in wage setting, right? So when you plot it against n, it would be upward sloping. If you plot it against u, it's downward sloping. So it's upward sloping in NW by P, right? And in this case, is a linear function of n. So its graph is a straight line. So because it's a linear function of n, its graph is a straight line in NW by N. So we know that when we plot it with rail weight on the vertical axis and then on horizontal axis, so because there's a positive relationship between the rail weight chosen in weight setting and the level of employment, it's upward sloping and it will be a straight line. So now PS in terms of rail wage. So PS in terms of rail wage remains unchanged. It's still, it was just simply W by P is 1 by 1, right? It won't change. Here, like we said now, WS was W by P is equal to 1 minus UC, and we said we had to write any U in this in terms of N. We did this. PS will remain the same, it's just W by P is 1 by 1 plus. Right, and the idea over here is okay, the real wage implied by price setting does not depend on it. So PS relation is drawn as a horizontal line. As a horizontal line in NW by P. So we know, okay, when we plot this, we have W by P on her vertical axis and then horizontal axis. Now the real wage implied, now it's a horizontal line because the real wage implied by price setting does not depend upon it. Regardless of the level of it, this is always going to be 1 by 1 plus n, right? So the real wage implied by price setting does not depend upon it, so it's drawn as a horizontal line. And the reason it's a horizontal line is because W by P is on the vertical axis, right? That's why it's not a vertical line, it's a horizontal line because W by P is on the vertical axis. So at this level of real wage, 1 by 1 plus n. So then the price setting curve is a horizontal line. So now if we just put it all together and just plot it, right, and then okay, so now let's just plot it. So we know now on the vertical axis we have W by P, the real wage, and on the horizontal axis we have level of employment N. And then we know a price setting curve is a horizontal line at the level of real wage implied by price setting. And we have an upward sloping W curve. Again, the reason it's upward sloping is because we have N over here instead of U, right? If we had U, then we saw in part B it's profit upward. Right, so this is like WS, which is W by P is equal to Z and L. This is PS, which is W by P is equal to 1 by 1 plus M, right? Drawn is a horizontal line at 1 by 1. And we know equilibrium occurs where WS is equal to PS. And here, this is going to give us the LN, right? The natural level of, right? So this is how we can plot WSPS relation. This is how we can plot WSPS relation in the where we have real wage on the vertical axis, but instead of small u, the unemployment rate, we want to plot the level of employment N on the horizontal axis, right?